Welcome to Not for Pie Eaters, the place where you chart the course for your best life possible. I'm John Dougal. Some people are crystal clear with what they want to accomplish in life, and others struggle, and for a variety of reasons. Maybe they've had too many other people telling them what they should want, and maybe they've chased another's dream but without any heart. Another possibility is that maybe they spent too many years in self-sacrifice and that their own desires just evaporated. Well, when I was in my late teens and early 20s, I was crystal clear of what I wanted. My desires were strong, and some of it was okay. Some of it was foolish. In the end, what did I want? Well, I wanted a gorgeous wife, a nice house by the beach, kids who were well-adjusted, had lots of friends. We could spend family vacations in exotic places, sailing in the tropics, gallivanting around Europe, discovering the history, skiing in Aspen and Vail, that sort of thing. In all honesty, I thought more about what it is that I wanted than how I was going to go about and get it. And then, of course, there were worse dreams, and these are the shallow teenage boys' dreams, before family, which is nuts, all about hot cars and hot women. Well, you get off into the real world, and you think all it's going to take is hard work, maybe a bunch of overtime and sticking money in the bank. So you work countless hours overtime trying to get a few nickels in your pocket. And after a few years, all that struggle dulls the appetite. And then the dreams shift away from what it was that you originally wanted, and it becomes all about the money. When I realized this shift, I had to spend some time meditating on how to get my head off the money and then back onto some sort of realistic passion. And this is passions that are not shallow. And then I needed to focus on how am I going to go out there and get what I want. Well, there's a great definition of meditating, and I love this one, but it's muttering to yourself. And so I own that, because that happened. You say, well, what is it I want? What do I want? How do I find out what it is that I want, and then how am I going to get it? Well, that's the muttering, and in the midst of the muttering and searching, I came across what I'll call a decoder ring that helped me figure things out. Maybe they'll help you figure things out for you. And that's the topic of today's message, is the decoder ring. For those who are struggling to want something with value, something that'll be worthwhile for all the time and the pain you're going to spend pursuing it, we're going to look at your values, and that's where you need to get started. We've discussed your 5 psychological needs. They come from William Glasser's cognitive behavioral therapy called reality therapy. And the needs are survival, connecting, power, freedom, and fun. Today, we're going to look at what values map to those needs. And then when we ponder that for a while, we can emphasize the values that you think are most important to you. In today's corporate world, we're inundated with the term a company's core values. I've heard that term so many times, I'll be honest with you, it got a bit nauseating. But hey, if it's worthwhile for a company to ponder that, maybe it's worthwhile for me to ponder what are my core values. So, I went off and hunted and searched for, lists of values, and I found several. And I pondered the list, and then I muttered to myself. The life coaching types, like these lists of values, so the internet's full of them. And I combined lots of lists and then wintered them down and made the word tense all the same and that kind of a thing. And it was in the midst of looking at those values where I finally figured out, hey, they map to psychological needs. Ooh, that got me a little excited. So I then looked at, the top 5 or 6 values for each need. And I discovered that, hey, there's still a teenage boy in me that loves cars and pretty women. Imagine that. But I also found that many of my values have multiple motivations. And a lot of those things are pure. So it's not just all about women in a flashy ride. Looking at values is a way of figuring out who you are and figuring out what you want to do. And wanting to do it, in part, is to prove to yourself, that these values that you identified are real. That's you. So linked in the description is a PDF list of values, and they're mapped already to your psychological needs. The mapping is my assessment, and people could make arguments that you might map it differently. It's a thought process, and if you feel like it doesn't map right, then go for it. Map it how you think it should. I added one other field, moral values. Moral values are not one of the 5 psychological needs, but I added it anyway. It comes from Jonathan Haidt's work on moral foundations and from his book, The Righteous Mind. At the end of this presentation, I'll make a link to Amazon where you can see and get a copy of his book if you'd like. It's called The Righteous Mind. And I'll do a video on that subject sometime in the future. For now, what are these moral foundations? Just consider it as an indication of your political proclivities. With that said, there are about 144 values listed alphabetically on the PDF that's in the description. Okay, on the screen here is a snip from the alphabetical list, and I just randomly grabbed a section, and these happen to start with either the F or the letter G. And so you can look at that and see how they map. You might value fame. Well, fame maps to power. You might value financial stability. Well, that maps to survival. And you might highly value your friends. Well, that maps to connecting. So it's exercise time. I suggest that you download a PDF copy of the list and then run through it and find your top 4 or 5 most important values for each psychological need. And then ask yourself the question, are you doing anything about these values? Ponder how you might go about getting these values met, and then process and learn a bit about yourself. What is it in life you want? If you find one of these top values lacks effort on your part, then you need to do something about it. Well, in a prior video, we used an example of improving time with friends, so we'll quickly run through this example again. Let's say you value friendship and you feel that your time with your friends is lacking. Maybe you're like me when I was younger and you spent way too much time at the office because of unrealistic deadlines. Well, it's been at it for 60 plus hours a week for a couple of months and there doesn't look like there's any end in sight. Well, that's something you need to do something about. Well, on the screen is the basic template, but modified for this situation so that we can try to get what we want, which is to spend more time with friends. And that falls under the domain of your psychological need of connecting. Well, then you got a problem you have to deal with. You need to deal with the work deadlines, and then you need some preparation to spend some time with your friends. Note that I've changed from the basic template others to friends. Well, we've identified the use cases and now we need to elaborate upon them. So let's look at solve problems first. You need to deal with those work deadlines, so you need to have a talk with your boss. Let them know, hey, I'm working 48 hours a week right now because this endless 60 hours a week isn't doing me a bit of good. I have no life. And that's a staffing problem. It's not my problem. I'm still willing to be a team player and put in some time, but not that much time. Okay, dealt with the problems. Then you need to get ready for your friends. So you need to go off and get some barbecue stuff. And then the day comes where you're going to spend more time with friends. Well, you let them know beforehand. You schedule when the barbecue's going to happen, and you have your friends over. look at that. You've done something about your values. Values come from the heart, and the key to understanding your heart is to be aware of your values. So, from Proverbs 4:23, above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. Not everything in our heart is good, but if what we want is good, well, we need to identify it and then put in the effort. For today's truth bomb, your values map to one or more of your psychological needs. Are you living in a way that prioritizes your values? Are your psychological needs being met? Because your values identify what should be your life's priorities. If you've seen more than a couple videos, it should be no mystery that I'm a Christian man. Jesus said, I came to give you life, and life more abundantly. That's my goal for all of this, is what I want for you is a rich and abundant life. And I'll say this much, people get confused over Jesus. For some reason, they think he's out to try to ruin their life and make it boring. Odd. Well, thanks for joining. Investigate your values. Figure out what floats your boat. Then go after it and be you. If you've enjoyed the channel, consider subscribing. Cheers.